This solar array was my last giant project in which I had almost no experience, and now I have another one. We've dreamed about getting an RV and going places with our 5 children, but renting or buying them new can be very expensive, so we got an old one for me to work on. Now, I don't know anything about RVs or diesel engines, so what's my first big challenge? Fixing an engine that will crank but not start.
Here we go. That didn't work.
So with the help of the internet, I'm going to conquer my fears and figure out how to get this engine running. This RV is a 1998 Newmar Dutch Star. We got this RV about 5 months ago and it sat in our driveway over the winter. Now I did run it a few times over those months, but now it won't start. So because it had been running before, the first thing I did was change the batteries. The batteries didn't seem to be charging that great, and my friend suggested maybe low power to a fuel pump. And so since I didn't know the histories, I just got new ones.
Fresh batteries. And the block heater was on for an hour.
So after charging it to 100% and cranked away, nothing. Next, I wondered if the fuel gauge isn't working and the RV is simply just out of fuel. So I added a few gallons of diesel, but yet it still wouldn't start. So I turned my attention to the internet, looked up my particular engine, and I read in forums that people say they use a hand pump already on the engine to force fuel up the line. So I looked everywhere inside my engine and I finally found the hand pump hidden under these hoses right here. So the travel distance on this hand pump is like 2 inches, and I might have to pump the fuel the entire length of the fuel line, so I pump hundreds of times before I try to start the engine. And like before, no matter how many times I pumped, the engine just wouldn't start. I also found out that you can check for diagnostic codes with the ignition on, cruise control off, and holding down the set switch. Then the engine light flashes a 2-digit code. Mine was 55, which means there are no diagnostic codes in the computer. So at this point, I'm pretty sure the issue is lack of fuel getting to the engine. So I went to change one of the fuel filters that also has a bottom portion that separates the water from the diesel. Now this bottom portion of the filter should be clear enough where you can see the liquid, but mine was full of this junk. Let me know if you guys have any clue on what this stuff might be. When I took off the plastic bowl and the filter itself, I expected fuel to come out, and so when it didn't, I wondered if there might be a blockage in the fuel line. So with the filter off, I got my air compressor and tried pressurizing the tank from the fill hole.
Oh, look at that. It's wet. It is wet right there. So that is a very good sign that we got some fuel to come out.
So since it didn't seem like the line was blocked, I pre-filled the new fuel filter with diesel and then I installed it. And with a new plastic bowl and understanding that water is more dense than diesel, I'll be able to see if water is settling at the bottom and drain it out if I need to. So with fuel hopefully a little bit closer to the engine, it's time to get back to pumping. This time when I tried it, I heard a little bit of something and I saw some white smoke come out, but no matter how hard I tried or how long I pumped, I could not get the engine to start. Now I'm starting to get frustrated, but not giving up. I bought a new secondary fuel filter to install. This secondary fuel filter is under the hand pump and it's there to filter out particles down to 2 microns. This old filter was crazy hard to get off, but after trying 3 different wrenches, I finally found the right spot to get enough leverage to break the seal. Now I didn't pre-fill this filter with fuel because the instructions on the side said not to. So this means back to pumping to see if I can fill up the filter from the fuel line itself. While I was pumping, I could hear fuel going into the filter, but I couldn't get it filled past halfway and I didn't know why. The next day I got a junky vacuum and I put it on the fuel line from the tank to be sure that there were no blockages, and it seemed to flow fine.
So it's like 90-some degrees in here. My shirt, I am dripping with sweat. Working here in the back bedroom of the RV. Down in there is where I'm kneeling down here and pumping away down there in that little tiny pump that has a travel distance of about 1.5 inches. But the fuel filter is filling up with fuel, and I can tell that I'm really close.
So it didn't seem with a clear fuel line, and no matter how many times I pumped, even when the plunger got very difficult to push back in due to pressure, that it was making any difference. And that's when I came up with a new idea. When you put the key in and turn to second position, a light comes on the dash telling you to wait to start. After pumping in the back, I'd usually make my way up to the front, then wait several seconds for this light to go off. So my idea was to leave the key in second position, pump until the plunger got really difficult to push in, then run to the front and immediately start the engine.
We did it! Yay! Ah, that purring sound is so awesome to hear. I can't believe it's running. I had so many fears about working on this myself, and all the things I read on the internet that it could be, and super expensive problems and all kinds of things. So I'm so glad that it wasn't any of those.
So what do I think the issue was? Well, I'm not really sure. Because it was sitting for a little bit of time, maybe a small air leak somewhere in the fuel system caused the fuel to drain back into the tank, and that whole time I was struggling to get the air out of the line. The filters themselves could have been dirty because I don't know the history, and that could have been compounding the problem, or there could have been a restriction in the main fuel line from the tank all the way up to that fuel filter, and I got that cleaned out. I honestly don't know, but I do know that I used that little plunger and pumped it as hard as I could till it got really tight, and then I ran up here to the front and got it started before that fuel had a chance to drain backwards into the tank. Now, it's been a few weeks now and the engine starts every time, but I am going to keep an eye out for any possible air leaks in the fuel line. So in the process here, I may have discovered a short circuit because the other day the engine batteries are completely dead and the engine was not running, and I had to get my little jump starter here to jump start the whole engine. It's kind of amazing these guys can do that. So I got to figure out if that's an actual short circuit or if it's something's turned on in here. So stay tuned for more sleuthing, repairs, upgrades to this guy. One of the things I'm excited about is upgrading the house electrical system, so stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, why don't you check out this video over here?